Before Silicon Valley, before the internet, before Zuckerberg was born, a small South American nation built something the world has never seen again. Chile, 1971. A country at a crossroads. And one man dared to ask, what if a government could think? Salvador Allende had just done the impossible. He was democratically elected as the world's first Marxist president, and Washington was already sharpening its knives. The people danced. The CIA dialed. Nixon told his CIA director, "Make the Chilean economy scream." What he didn't know was that Chile was about to build its nervous system. Meanwhile, in Britain, a wild-bearded genius named Stafford Beer had spent his entire career asking one question. Could a nation be run like a brain? The viable system model. Beer believed every organization, every government, had the same structure as a living nervous system. And he was about to prove it. Fernando Flores, Chile's young Minister of Economics, read Beer's book in one sitting. Then he wrote a letter that would change history. He wrote to Beer, "Come to Chile. We have nationalized our industries. We need to run them in real time. I believe you know how." Beer read the letter 3 times, then he booked a flight to Santiago. He later wrote, "They were offering me a whole country as a laboratory." October 1971, Stafford Beer landed in Santiago with nothing but his brain, his beard, and the most radical idea in political history. In that corridor began Project Cybersyn, what they called the nervous system of a socialist state. The plan was audacious. Every nationalized factory in Chile connected to a central computer in Santiago. Real-time economic data, flowing like blood through a national brain. 500 telex machines, 400 factories, 1 computer, and an operations room unlike anything the world had ever built. Guy Bonsiepe designed the ops room. 7 futuristic chairs arranged in a circle, no desks, no paperwork, only screens showing the heartbeat of the entire Chilean economy. Each chair had buttons in the armrest. Press a button, the wall screens changed. No mouse, no keyboard, just data responding to human intention. The screens showed everything. If a factory in Concepcion fell behind production, Santiago knew within hours, not weeks, hours. Every day, factory supervisors across Chile fed data into telex machines, production numbers, material shortages, worker hours, and it all flowed to Santiago. Chile had exactly 1 computer, 1 IBM 360 mainframe, and Beer had to make it run an entire nation's economy in real time. Beer's genius was this: you don't need to control everything. You only need to respond to what falls outside normal limits. He called it algedonic signaling, pain and pleasure messages from the economy itself. July 1972. Cybersyn went live. For the first time in history, a government could see its entire economy, breathing, struggling, producing in real time. When Allende first saw Cybersyn, he immediately grasped its revolutionary power. He asked Beer, "Can workers see this data too?" Beer said, "That was the plan all along." Beer insisted Cybersyn was not a tool to watch workers. It was a tool to give workers visibility over their own economy, management from below, not above. When Washington learned about Cybersyn, they didn't understand it at first. Then they did. And that's when the real war began. October 1972. CIA-backed truck owners launched a massive strike to strangle Chile's economy. They thought they had won. They hadn't met Cybersyn. Cybersyn showed Beer which roads were open, which drivers were loyal, which factories still had supplies. He could route the entire remaining transport network around the strike in real time. Within 48 hours, Cybersyn had rerouted Chile's entire supply chain. The strike that was supposed to collapse the government barely dented it. Beer wrote in his diary that night, "The system worked. The question now is whether the system will be allowed to keep working." Nixon and Kissinger had a name for what they were doing. They called it making the economy scream. They had been doing it for 2 years. Chile wasn't screaming yet, so they escalated. The generals had been promised American support if they moved. All they needed was a pretext, and they were very patient men. Beer's team built Checo, a model that could simulate the entire Chilean economy. They could test government policies before implementing them, economic time travel. Beer's vision went further. Cybersyn was only phase 1. Phase 2 would connect every neighborhood. Phase 3, every citizen. A democracy where the people didn't just vote every few years, they governed every day. Allende told Parliament, "We are building the technology of the people. For the first time, the economy will serve the nation, not the other way around." The oligarchy understood perfectly what Cybersyn meant. If workers could see the economy, really see it, the game was over. The mask would fall. Word was getting out. International journalists started arriving in Santiago. What they found was the future, running on a shoestring in a developing nation. At its peak, Cybersyn was managing 400 factories, tracking 500 key economic variables, and doing it all with less computing power than today's pocket calculator. The genius was never the machine. It was the design. Beer worked 18-hour days. He was writing the theory as he was building the practice. He called it the most important work of his life. He may have been right. Allende once told Beer, "Stafford, we are not building socialism. We are building something that has never existed. We are building conscious democracy." Beer wanted Cybersyn taught in schools. He believed economic literacy wasn't a luxury. It was the only real defense against tyranny. But the boots were already polished. The planes were already fueled. The CIA had made its decision. And September 11th, 1973, was already chosen on someone's calendar. September 11th, 1973. The day Chile's experiment died. The day democracy was murdered with American complicity. And the day the internet that never was killed before the world even knew it existed. Allende received the call at 6:30 a.m. The Navy had seized the ports. The army surrounded the palace. He had one choice: flee. He chose to stay. Beer looked out his window and understood immediately. He later wrote, "I knew then that everything we had built was already dead." At 11:52 a.m., military jets bombed La Moneda Palace, the presidential palace of a democratically elected government, bombed by its own air force, with American blessing. Inside the burning palace, Allende made his last radio broadcast to the Chilean people. He spoke for 6 minutes. He never lowered his voice. He said, "They have the force. They can enslave us, but they cannot stop the long avenues through which free people will walk to build a better society." Then the signal went dead. In the ops room, the screens kept showing data for hours after the coup. The factories kept sending their reports. The machine didn't know the experiment was over. The soldiers who found the ops room didn't know what it was. Some thought it was a spaceship. One filed a report calling it the control room for communist mind control. Pinochet sat in the ops room chair. The irony was exquisite and sickening. The chair designed for collective democratic management, now occupied by a dictator who would go on to torture 40,000 of his own people. One by one, the screens went dark. The most ambitious democratic technology project in history switched off in an afternoon. Stafford Beer was put on a plane and expelled from Chile within days of the coup. He never returned. He never recovered. He said later, Chile was the one time his work had truly mattered. Fernando Flores was arrested and imprisoned for 3 years. He was later expelled. He eventually went to Silicon Valley, where he helped build entirely different kinds of networks. They didn't just shut down Cybersyn, they tried to erase it. Documents burned, tapes confiscated, as if the idea itself could be killed along with the machine. What replaced Cybersyn was the stadium. 40,000 Chileans detained, thousands tortured, thousands disappeared, and Chile's economy handed directly to Milton Friedman's Chicago boys to run for corporations, not citizens. In 24 hours, Chile moved from the most advanced democratic management system in the world to a brutal military dictatorship, and nobody came to stop it.